Thank you, Angela, very much for accepting to participate into this seminar series. It will be a very important seminar for us because we started as on an epistemological basis, but we mean to apply, we mean to turn it into the political, because I think that this is the natural destination of epistemology.
Absolutely.
Okay, just a quick introduction, because you can read about Angela on the poster and on the website later. So she's been an academic in Columbia and other places. She lives in Northern England, and she has developed together with Stafford Beer, she'll tell us more about that, the theory organizational cybernetics. She's the founder of Metaforum, an NGO that is meant to develop Beer's legacy. She holds a Norbert Wiener Award in 2007. Okay, so thank you very much. We look forward to listen to you.
Thank you very much, Brunella, and thank you very much for inviting me to talk to get to know your group. I'm very excited and very interested in knowing more about you. So hopefully we'll have a good conversation after this. So I'll start basically what I have entitled this talk: Viability, Sustainability, and Self-Governance, and an emancipatory approach to challenge traditional hierarchies. And I'm gonna just summarize what I understand for this. So first of all, what I will expect to do in this talk is to introduce you very broadly to the VSM, the Viable System Model, and focus on the views of self-governance that come from the VSM theory. And then I would like to provide a response to VSM critics on the way that VSM deals with powers and politics, and to argue that if properly understood, the VSM is a really emancipatory approach. And I will try to demonstrate that through arguments and also through examples. And then I would like to reflect on how the VSM could help shifting institutions and societies towards a post-capitalistic economy. So this is the idea of the talk. I am assuming that you know the Viable System Model. So I'm not. I didn't prepare, let's say, an explanation in detail about the theory. So I'm just gonna give you an overview of the theory. This is Stafford Beer. Stafford Beer was very famous when he developed the Viable System Model for his project in Chile, the CyberSyn project in Chile in the 1971-73, when Salvador Allende was the president, because it was, let's say, the first time that anyone tried to apply a socialist model of governance that was using latest state-of-the-art technology of the time. That wasn't really very developed, because in those days we didn't have internet, the computers, we didn't have microcomputers, so everything was very precarious, technologically talking. But the project, the attempt to put into practice the VSM and these ideas of governance was very, very famous. And there is all sorts of documentaries and online sites, and there has been conferences, and there has been enormous interest, even in this moment that we celebrated last year, the 50th-year anniversary of the CyberSyn project. There is still a lot of people around the world that are still, let's say, inspired by this way of thinking about the governance. And so Stafford, the basic theory that he developed was the VSM. It was inspired in the understanding of the neurology, the brain, the relationship between the brain and the body. It was inspired by Warren McCulloch's mathematical model of the brain, that he presented the brain as a neural network. He was the inventor of the idea of neural networks, and let's say that after that, the internet was developed based on these theories of neural network. So he was one of the pioneer cyberneticians, and he was Stafford Beer's mentor. So what Stafford did was to take Warren McCulloch's ideas of the brain and the relationship with the body. And he made an analogy on how an organization, a social organization, could be organized as a neural network. He did it because he realized that there were recurrent patterns of interaction, repetitive patterns, systemic patterns in the way that living systems self-organize. Yeah, and based in this inspiration, in this analogy, he developed this idea, this model of how a social organization could be best organized to be viable, to be more resilient, to be able to last over time. And then he developed some basic criteria of what is a viable system. He called it a viable system, how an organization can be more viable. And the criteria is basically that a viable system is a kind of network of organization that is capable of independent existence. That's what he means by being viable. And each one of the networks of the nodes of the network of the subsidiary organizations is also self-organized, self-regulated, is hierarchical, not hierarchical, co-evolves and adapts, and is capable of managing real-time information and decisions. So it's very agile. Things happened, are done, and they are decided when needs to be done. And this is a recursive theory. That means that every viable system is contained in other viable systems and contains other viable systems. So you can apply the same principles to any level of subsidiarity in a network of organizations. So Stafford published several books, and in the 1970s, he became very well known. He became an international consultant. He was the president of the International, the Operational Research Society of the United Kingdom. He was very well known, and for several years, let's say while he was alive, the VSM became one of the most important systemic approaches, in particular to management, because what he called his theory organizational cybernetics or management cybernetics, that was basically to apply these principles in management. However, after he published, he did the project CyberSyn, there have been several of the principles of the cybernetic principles that have been misunderstood. And many critics have come with criticisms like that I'm going to try to explain to you. And the way that I think that some of these criticisms have been very destructive for developing the VSM. Even though with all these criticisms, the VSM is now in this moment, in the last 10 years, 20 years, the number of publications of the VSM are growing and growing and growing. Why? Because now we do have the technology to make this a reality, to make this sort of organization happening. And we are seeing a shift in the paradigm of what is an effective organization, and we are moving from hierarchical organizations, very rigid organizations, into hierarchical organizations, organizations like networks that are much more fluid and adaptive and resilient. So Stafford Beer pioneered and saw this way of organizing long before all the complexity sciences theorists that came later in the 1990s with ideas of complex adaptive systems, and they started talking about exactly the same basic cybernetic principles with other language, with other additions, but not challenging any of the principles that Beer was said. One of the main ideas is that haven't been well understood in the literature is the idea of variety management. No? For Stafford Beer, complexity is the different states that a system can be in, and variety is a way of measuring complexity. But it's a qualitative measurement. It's not a quantitative measurement. It's a relational measurement. So you can say that a system have high variety or low variety. Many critics have come to think that Stafford Beer and Ashby and Stafford Beer saw variety as something objective that have to be precisely and numerical and quantitative, which the original theory doesn't say that. On the contrary, what it says is that the observer is always that the organization is in the eye of the observer. So the way that an observer looks at a particular situation determines the variety that this observer can manage or cannot manage. Yeah. So variety is a question that is directly related with our beliefs, that allows the idea that there are multiple realities, not just one reality, that there is not objective knowledge, and that basically it is the observer who determines ways of managing or not managing variety. Yeah. What I have done in the last years, I have sort of clarified the BSM, in particular in issues of sustainability. I'm very passionate, and my husband John have worked with me in that, in clarifying the idea. We think that an organization needs to not only to be viable but sustainable, and sustainable in the way that is not only producing enough money, be financially viable, because people talk about financial sustainability as a financial, being able to sustain themselves financially. But we think that that the idea is that an organization that is viable and sustainable should be structurally coupled to its niche, like Maturana and Varela will say, can survive with the resources it can access, will welcome products and services, will improve members and communities' well-beings, and will preserve ecosystems' resilience. Yeah. So it is in this context that we have, let's say, developed and clarified Beer's original ideas. We see organizations as composed of people that are trying to have a common purpose, a shared purpose, to develop certain kind of tasks, and need to learn continually by doing. Yeah, people learn by doing, and managing complexity is completely related with organizational learning, with learning. In what you see in real organizations are that people become, or not, learning teams. They share their perspectives on organization. They critically learn to challenge them through dialogue and group learning, and they continually need to rebuild their individual and group mental models of what is the kind of organization they are in. So it is in this perspective that I understand the bubble system and how that it manages complexity. Now, the BSM provides some criteria. One of the most important aspects of the BSM is this idea of self-governance. Yeah, it says if you have an organization that is like a network, each one of the nodes needs to be self-governed. Yeah, so the criteria for self-governance that the organization provides includes things like having a clear identity, closure, capability of closing the learning loops, having clear ethos or shared ethos and policies, being able to develop collective consciousness, being able to sustainably self-governed, having distributed control and leadership, being able to generate synergy between the different nodes, the different subsidiary organization that we call the systems one in BSM language, having clear and transparent rules of the games, having harmonized interactions between the subsidiary organizations. Each one of the organizations need to be autonomous, self-organizing, no? The relationship with the environment, there should be agile, that should be able to make decisions clearly. There should be continuously scanning the environment and innovating and developing the capabilities for adaptation. Yeah. So this is, like, broadly speaking, the idea, the criteria that you end up developing when you are looking as an organization, a complex organization, from a BSM perspective. Stafford also developed in his last years the team's integrity as a methodology for managing complex decisions in large groups. Team's integrity is a very, very interesting approach because it allows a large variety of stakeholders with as diverse and conflictive or different ways of points of view to meet over a 2.5 days in a protocol that is inspired in the figure of an icosahedron, that is the best possible organization for teams to collectively address a complex issue. The idea is that participants will take part in dialogue in an equal and fair basis. It helps building consensus around controversial issues. It promotes democratic debate. Reverberations can give rise to increased group consciousness. It enhances critical learning and promotes emancipatory thinking if done with a proper facilitation. So this technology or methodology has been very successfully used in businesses. Stafford Beer left the copyright of this work to a Swiss company called Malicon Management, and they have used integrations in about 1,000 different organizations around the world in the last 25 years. Yeah, I myself have practiced teams integrity, and it's a fascinating, really exciting, and really amazing technology. So Stafford designed this because he was very aware of the complexity of the political relationships between what he calls system 3, 4, and 5. No, that are like the managerial, the developmental, and the political organs in an organization. And he was aware that there was a need for a technology that, methodologies and processes that would facilitate these very complex interactions in a democratic way. So that's TEMS integrity. And the way that I have been practicing the VSM in the last 20 years have been through a methodology that I use that I call the self-transformation methodology. And the way that I do it is that I use the VSM as a kind of meta language that I coach my participants in a VSM project in the VSM principles. And through a series of stages, I help them for them to go through understanding the organization, discussing issues of identity and policy, then identifying levels of subsidiarity and mapping their organization, then mapping the organization with the VSM language, and then doing collectively a diagnosis of the main, let's say, issues that are not working properly in an organization, and then jointly redesigning the organization using VSM criteria, and then agreeing on what I call self-transformation projects, that is the kind of changes that could be done and should be done to generate an organization that is more viable and sustainable. Yeah, so that's the way that I have used it. And as Mike Jackson, from that I hope that you know who is Mike Jackson, is one of the leaders of critical system thinking. I worked with him in his university in the Center of System Science for 20 years. I'm now an emeritus professor there. He used to say that that to be a systemic methodology, an emancipatory systemic methodology, you will have a methodology that will serve the technical interest, will serve the practical interest, and will serve the emancipatory interest. And the way that I have practiced the self-transformation methodology will check these points. I mean, will agree with these things. However, Mike Jackson and Ulrich, Werner Ulrich from Switzerland, they have been, and other people like Habermas and other people have been very critical of the VSM. I have recently written a paper because there is a special issue in the Systems Journal with a fetch script for Mike Jackson, and I wrote a paper that is not going to be published, in which I respond to some of the traditional criticisms. I do say that the VSM, Heath says, for example, that the VSM is functionalist, that it seeks to provide knowledge based on cybernetic principles that support regulation of in the social domain. So in his view, I think that he views the VSM with an autocratic mind, and he thinks that the VSM reflects a sort of model of autocratic management, and that is looking for regulating for external control of organizations, for imposing an external control in organizations. I completely disagree with him, because I think that VSM is not to support regulation in the social domain, but to promote self-regulation and self-governance, and to improve adaptive capabilities. Yeah, he thinks, for instance, that the cybernetic knows a principle generate the phenomena that we observe, ignoring, yeah, and then he concludes that then the BSM is ignoring the relevance of individuals' culture and power in social systems. I completely disagree with him, and I think that the BSM laws and action have a powerful explanatory and diagnostic power to identify unhealthy relationships between people and to create a context for allowing diversity and collaboration and to challenge established power structures. Because the BSM, when put into practice, what it does is precisely to say, okay, we look at this organization, it doesn't comply with BSM principles, it is not self-organized, it's not self-governance, it's an autocratic organization when the boss is telling everyone what to do. And with the BSM, you say, this is not the best way of organizing, you should challenge this power structure, you should empower people at the operational level to take control. So the BSM, when properly used and understood, what it does is to distribute control. It's not to impose an external control. Jackson as well says that the BSM only works in organizations that have unitary purposes and values. And he provides as an example, as a proof, the Cybersyn project, saying that there is a very famous moment in the project in which Salvador Allende, the president of Chile, says when Stafford is explaining him the BSM and he comes to System 5, that is the policy organ of the BSM, Allende says, finally, el pueblo, no, the people. And then Jackson says, well, that demonstrate that all the Chileans have already adopted a democratic and participatory milieu, and therefore that's why the BSM was useful in Chile. The reality is that it wasn't like that. Eden Medina, who had done a PhD working in MIT about the Cybersyn project in Chile, she demonstrated that it wasn't the case. The level of controversy about Salvador Allende political project was very notorious. There was all sorts of disjoint perceptions, and even though the project was a successful project. He also gives an example of a project that I lead with my husband, with John Walker, in Ireland, that was using the BSM to help a community to self-organize to build up a 100% ecological town. And for 3 years, we went and worked with them. It was a very beautiful and very powerful and effective way of application of the BSM. And then Jackson argues that it was because everybody think exactly the same, and that's why the BSM worked in that context. But the reality was that it was a very, very varied community, very disjointed perceptions, and what we did after 3 years was to help the community to develop a more cohesive way of understanding things with higher connectivity and reciprocity, and with a more effective communication network. And we proved after 3 years using social network analysis that these characteristics have emerged as a result of the BSM project. So very different from the argument from Jackson. Yeah. Ulrich, for instance, says that the BSM operates at the syntactic and not the semantic level, and that's one of the main criticisms to take away the value of the BSM. But several of Stafford Beer's followers, including Raúl Espejo, who was my PhD supervisor, and Roger Harden, another PhD supervisor from Stafford, and Alfonso Reyes from Colombia. We and John and me and Mark Johnson and Oleg Lieber, we have been developing the BSM from the ontology of the observer, sort of much more from a Maturana's perspective, in which we see that it is the purposeful and intentional nature of individuals and such social organizations dealing with variety that when you use the BSM in that context, you bring about a context for individuals to achieve self-organization and to develop to their maximum their potential. Yeah, so this can only be done through conversations, and the BSM just helps like a meta language to orient and structure conversations in a way that help people to identify the issues that are obstacles for them to be able to be more effective in working together. Yeah, the methodologies for applying the BSM, like Espejos by Plan, my own self-transformation methodology, are there to facilitate individual and organizational learning through informed dialogues. and are aimed at developing capabilities for self-transformation inspired by cybernetic criteria. Another criticism is that BSM lacks an understanding of social systems. The understanding of human and social systems it fails to understand social systems in highly politicized environments. That it misses the fact that the social humans ascribe meaning to a situation and different purposes, and that the emphasis placed on organizational design obscure issues of culture. The way that we use the BSM is to facilitate conversations of issues, in particular issues of culture and politics. And BSM really allows us to visualize, no, by doing all the mapping and all the analysis, to visualize aspects of social interaction, including differences on value and power asymmetries that may have become rooted, maybe polarizing attitudes, maybe reducing capabilities for organizational learning. And same, I mean, I'm not gonna go into all the detail because it's gonna take me too long, but basically we have responded to some of these criticisms, explaining how the BSM really, what it does is to distribute control and leadership and to empower workers to self-govern, which implies negotiating goals and tasks with managers. Jackson used to say, no, but then you create the illusion of control to the workers, but then you impose goals and indicators and ways of measuring performance on them. This is a misunderstanding. The real way that it works is properly done is that you will empower workers to participate in the definition of their own goals and to be the ones responsible for measuring, and very active in issues of performance. So the same thing regarding this says that it doesn't provide methods to achieve to manage process of negotiation. And then the reality is that, for instance, team's integrity is a tool to facilitate democratic agreements. The methodologies that we use, like BIPLAN and STM, is there to facilitate organization, to facilitate conversations about organizational learning. And there are many examples of applications that I have published in my book, in the book that I showed you in the beginning, that was published last year in 2023, many examples that I can mention quickly, a few of them. Like, for instance, one of the examples is the Social Solidarity Network. That was a 4-year project applied in Colombia, the national government. It was a development project to fight poverty in Colombia. And inspired the BSM, we designed a monitoring system that will work at the national, regional, and local level. And we created these solidarity tables with representatives from the poor people benefiting from the system, from the projects, for them to be the ones monitoring the effectiveness of the implementation of these development programs. So we wanted to make sure that these development programs were affecting in a positive way the levels of poverty, and not only just measuring if the money has been used or not. And it was really effective. It was the best project I did in Colombia when I lived in Colombia in the 1990s. And it demonstrated that it was decisions were done when required. There were participatory decisions and agreements of budgets and projects at each level, and we developed and tested the idea of early alarms to sort of alert the system when things were getting out of control. It was very participatory, very democratic, and very beautiful. I have published several papers about this. We did another national project in Colombia in the 1990s that was redesigning the national school system. And even if this project wasn't completed, in the 2 years that we did the project, we managed to develop a few prototypes. And the main effect was to empower the schools and the school governments to be able to take control on their own destinies, to be able to manage their budget, to be able to be more autonomous, to develop, to decide on their development projects, and to be much more engaged to the community, more engaged to the parents, to more engaged to the community, different kind of people there, and we managed to sort of reproduce this system at different levels. We did as well in 1996 what was called the Gorgonas integration, that was applying teams integrity to design the environmental sector in Colombia. And it was a beautiful integration with representatives from indigenous, Black people of the country, academics, industry representatives, government representatives. And it was very important and influenced the development of the environmental sector for the next years. And then we did a project that was to implement, to reflect, to reflect on the organization of the national environmental system, and we did it in a way that we managed to map each one of the strategic ecoregions in the country using the VSM, and we managed to see which were the main issues in terms of managing information, communication, and making decisions. And for the 4 years that we run this project in the 1990s, there was a totally participatory approach to strategic planning of the environmental sector, and there was all sorts of innovations in terms of how to represent and understand environmental governance. In the last years in Colombia, with some of my PhD and MSc students, I did really interesting applications. One of them was with a group of indigenous in the Amazon, that was with Carolina Duque, an anthropologist in Colombia. She had been working with these people in the Pirá Paraná, a group of indigenous. And then we decided for a year, we organized some workshops with them to try to understand the main problems of governance. They had problems because they have been an untouched community that was only discovered by the Colombians, the white Colombians, let's say, in the last 20 years. And then they were declared an UNESCO National Heritage Site because they have lived in this place that is absolute paradise in the middle of the Amazon jungle, in a completely ecological way, without destroying any of the richness of the jungle, because they have a way of ethos and principles and ways of organizing themselves and relating with nature that are 100% sustainable. So, but they did have problems of how to interact with the regional government, with the Colombian authorities, and how to make themselves respected in their issues and values, and how to preserve some of their approaches to economy, the economical and social and ecological way of doing things. And it was a beautiful project, and we basically managed to empower them to identify their issues of governance and to act upon them collectively. Something similar happened in Rosario Island. This is a beautiful archipelago in the Caribbean, in the Colombian Caribbean, and is one of the most preserved marine ecosystems in the country. And there is an Afro-Caribbean community that have been living there for several centuries, and the Colombian constitution protect them as well as the indigenous to be self-governed and to respect their own traditions and things. And with another student of mine, also an anthropologist, we did an intervention that lasted for 6 months or something in the Rosario Island using the VSM, and we managed to map the different kind of communities that were working there, doing ecotourism, air care, using the land, and so on. And we managed to identify the different community leaders and reflect about their assembly, the community assembly, and identify issues that were not working and help them to strengthen their own governance as a community. More recently, during the COVID, with John, my husband, we did a couple of interventions in the National Health Service And we managed to identify some recurrent governance challenges, both inside a hospital, focusing in just one unit in a hospital. In that case, we work with the breast cancer unit, and for 4 months, 6 months, we were working with the people and trying to identify what were the main issues that they couldn't deal with very well. And then we did the same with the whole trust, to identify what were the issues of governance that were not dealt with properly and that were impeding or a more effective response to the COVID. And we did this, and in the book I do a comparison between the kind of things that are recurring, like for instance, in all cases, top-down hierarchical leadership, not enough bottom-up innovations, need for effective operational self-governance, lack of alignment between clinical and managerial criteria. And these are issues that you, observing with the BSM at different levels of subsidiarity, you can identify these patterns and you can sort of alert people and start generating interventions. Later on, I did a project also con John and another of my ex MBA students from Hall, Vladimir Pop in Romania. This was a group of 8 schools in Cluj, and then private schools, but very systemic, very, very leader schools. And we used the BSM for a year, and then we saw how it was a very centralized structure, and it was very inefficient, the management, and it was sort of producing all sorts of tensions and problems with the teachers, with the parents, with the students. And we managed to create an organization that was much healthier and more flexible and adaptable, with more autonomy for the different teachers and the headmasters, and it was really successful and very nice. And it happened just before the pandemic started, and then the owner of the school, Vladimir Pop, says that by the end, it helped the schools to reorganize and to be much more effective. So these are just examples that show you that if we go back to Mike Jackson and his critiques on the BSM, in his own language, what he calls, what are the criteria for what he calls an emancipatory systems approach. These are the criteria. It should address conflict, marginalization, and the need for a fairer society, includes marginalized people into system design, emphasizes the importance of powers and politics in organizations, brings about a context for individuals to achieve the maximum development of their potential, favors all concerned parties to have as equal chance of articulating the concerns as possible. And in my experience and the way that I understand BSM and Team's integrity, they both comply with all the criteria. Jackson considered that Team's integrity it complies with all the criteria, but he always said that BSM didn't, because I don't think that he has understood the BSM completely. And then the conclusion is that if we want to shift our society to a more post-capitalistic society, I think that we all agree that in this moment the world is facing really multiple and difficult crises. It all looks that we are moving in the wrong direction, and we consider that a prerequisite to generate a cultural global change is to change the way we organize ourselves. And what is a post-capitalistic society? A society that would ensure that every human being in the society is provided with the basics for a fulfilling life, and our devastated ecosystems could be regenerated. You could reverse the process of destruction of the biodiversity and natural resources and ecosystems that we are going through in this industrial capitalistic society. And we consider that cyber systemic approaches can help us to shift to a post-capitalistic society. In particular, I suggest that both BSM and Team's integrity can be seen as emancipatory rules to provide self-governance. It can inspire new ways of understanding self-governance. They can help to develop the potential of individuals. to articulate their concerns. They can inspire us new ways of understanding governance. They can help us to practice more democratically and creatively ways of deciding ways forward. And also, the theory is so robust and so complete, the VSM theory, that it can be used as a kind of meta language to reflect how to combine and complement the VSM, because of course the VSM and teams integrity doesn't offer all the solutions, but there are many other approaches, systems and cybernetics and complex systems approaches that provide solutions, and that combined could be a really good way to try to shape the society. In that respect, if we want to design systemic change in society, we will need to, there are things that are against any systemic changes in society, like, for instance, the lack of continuity in systemic leadership, the strong drive to maintain the status quo, authoritarian, autocratic management styles, the lack of critical facilitation, the lack of communicative skills. Of course, we cannot change all these at the same time, but at least with little experiments, we can progressively create difference and then inspire other people to follow up. And hopefully, over time, there will be a possibility of creating a really radical change. We talked with John about the barefoot cybernetics, and we said that it will be ideal if we could disseminate these ideas and develop further these ideas to come up with a really fully emancipatory approach. Jackson himself talked about the need to develop a radical change agenda. And we think that VSM and Teams Integrity offer the basics for creating emancipation from traditional control structures, and that combining them with other systems approaches and tools, it is possible to develop a radical change agenda to challenge traditional power structures. There are other approaches to self-governance that could be really interesting to combine with the VSM. We are beginning to explore, for instance, how to combine sociocracy, polycentric governance with the VSM. In the recent conference in Oxford, we made a proposal on how to combine them. But there are other things like the Viable system approach, enterprise complexity model, DAOs, TIL organizations, Renden HAI, that are appearing everywhere, and that are all of them based in systems and cybernetic principles that can give inspiration on how can we come up with something very strong. This is an example of the work that we are doing, is work in progress of how to take some principles from polycentric governance and represent them in the VSM and complement what the VSM already does, and same with sociocracy. And in conclusion, we think that BSM will, in Teams Integrity, do encourage democratic debates, innovation and development of adaptive capabilities, transparent and participatory decision-making, distributed ethical leadership, self-organization and self-governance, that will facilitate the transition to hierarchical organizations with polycentric governance. And that combined with other systems approaches and tools, we may be able to contribute to make a shift to a post-capitalistic society. Obviously, more applied research is highly desirable and necessary to demonstrate the power of these approaches. And that's it. I'm leaving you with a group of references of people that are sort of working in this direction, the references to the original critiques, and that's all for me. That will do.
Hey, Angela, thank you very much. So rich, and I have so much to ask you. But I would like someone else to start if they have questions, doubts. It sounds like visionary. It's an enormous visionary proposal that for sure we understand if we are already inside. But well, I'll ask you later. What about the ones who are completely alien to this mentality? Anyway, let's see. Questions? Nicole, I know he's on the train, so maybe you haven't much.
Sorry, can you hear me?
See, yes.
Well, I'm very sorry. Unfortunately, I had no chance to listen because I was just on the train traveling, commuting between Rome and Naples. In any case, I'm absolutely interested in this kind of approach also for its implication for the legal world, because law is about regulation of complex interaction and I would say cybernetic systems. And I hope I'll have a chance to listen to the recording and maybe come up later on with some question. Who knows if it's possible online and try to reach out and come up with the
Okay, so
yeah,
we have
question, yeah.
we'll have more occasions later. Ciao, Nicole. Okay, so
Well, yeah, I am. I'm not an expert in law. I'm less than an expert in law. I really know very little about that. But some of my colleagues have been exploring the relationship between BSM and at least justice, for instance, and issues of democracy as well. So I could point you towards people that have been exploring this connection. I know that in a more generic way, Frigio Capra, that I'm sure that you know about Frigio Capra, has produced a recent book that is about the law, systems and law, how it's really necessary to completely change the laws in order to do any systemic change in society. So definitely Capra's book will be very important to see.
It's been published together with a legal scholar from Italy, as far as I know. It is about the kind of connection between the systemic thinking and law, and complexity also.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And
we might have an intervention on system theory or BSM and
I'd love to.
And the law. I think it's could be crucial.
Yeah.
Good.
You mentioned before CyberSyn. I have a class at University in Legal Informatics, and I mentioned CyberSyn because in Italy we had a philosopher of law talking about legal cybernetics or something like that. Jus Cibernetica was called in Italy. Mario Lozano. And it is absolutely fascinating. The point is that he did not come up with concrete experiments, or much more interested in bringing together semological perspectives and concrete approaches. So I'm also in computational social science. I'm interested in bridging the gap between these different areas, different levels of analysis of reality. So if you allow me, I'll drop you to 2 lines, and it would be a pleasure to start discussing.
Yes, just do it. I'll be delighted.
Yeah. I'd love to create a connection. Here this evening, together with us, is also a former student of mine.
Ilaria. Maybe Ilaria has a question for the bells.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I was referring to a thesis about complexity theory and law and the strong connection with cybernetics. And so I'd love to also to explore this. I consider cybernetics as a component of complexity theory. So
yeah, we'll expand this connection. I think we should expand this connection. Yeah. Anyway, I have 1 or 2 questions. Well, I have many questions. For sure, it's a tool for emancipation. But in order to organize such a system or super system, how to disorganize our hierarchical structures? Because from here to there, what can be the intermediate steps? I think this is the main problem.
Yeah. I know, I agree with you completely. The way that I do work, I mean, I work normally in projects. I have been a very practical academic. I like very much practice. I don't like just theorizing for the sake of theorizing. So the way that I have learned has been to try to put into practice these ideas at different levels in different kinds of organizations. Yeah, and the kind of learning that you have in each case is what you call how to disorganize first, or to challenge the principles of organization. That's what I have experienced in my BSM projects, is that when you bring these ideas into practice, and start challenging the way that people are organized, people respond in very interesting ways. Just the fact of being in a workshop when you are reflecting about your organization and the rooted structures, traditional structures, and authoritarian structures and everything,
Of course.
Start creating a consciousness that
Yes, I can imagine the base being interested and concerned and finding an advantage to that. But what about the top? Okay, why should they renounce or give in?
Yeah, that's always the most challenging question. Yeah, my experience is that this kind of experiments, because normally what you do is an experiment, yeah, only work when you have a manager that has itself developed interest or understanding in a more systemic way of doing things. I have tried both in cases in which there is a very autocratic traditional manager and I'm trying to do something on the bottom, and in cases in which there is a management that is sympathetic or open to more to systemic ideas. And definitely the times that I have succeeded or succeeded more have been when there has been a manager that already is and is sympathetic or open to experiment with a more systemic way of doing things. So this is the first step. How do you get to transform the way of thinking of the managers so that they open the road to experiments on systemic ways of change, of producing change? Yeah.
So it is a bottom-up approach. That is, it cannot be implemented heavily. It should go, should expand from small communities to. So the way I imagine it is not just one model, but a multiplicity of different VSM models.
Definitely.
So in order that you have multiple models working horizontally.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that in the long run, it looks like, sounds like something that must be implemented, because otherwise, the hierarchies do not work anymore. So there must be this natural. So what will be the price? Well, with this, no, another question. What about conflicts? So maybe this aligns a little with your critics. What about conflicts? It's as if conflicts would fade away, but it sound too optimistic?
No, conflicts will never fade away. Conflicts are part of human nature. Yeah. And every time that we are together, we are different perceptions of reality and different interests and different power struggles and different personalities. So it is impossible to work in an organization that is conflict free. There is no way. Organizations are always full of conflicts. So the VSM doesn't ignore conflict. Yeah. What the VSM can do is to create a context. I call it a conversational space that is normally not there in many organizations, in which people can confront their different perceptions of organization and can have a sort of civilized dialogue about it. And if it's facilitated, because normally a VSM project will be facilitated, it's not there need to be someone that has facilitation skills and is capable of inviting the different perspectives, allowing the different perspectives to confront each other and find a way through. And the way through is never a definite solution. I mean, you can get some agreements about issues. No, what the VSM allows you is to focus on the critical issues, yeah, to help some agreements about what is the less thing that we need to do in this moment in order to go somewhere. So it facilitates, let's say, finding issues that are critical and facilitates conversations about solutions that can be co-produced, built together with the people. That's what it does. Oh, that's the way that I practice the VSM. Yeah, there is no naivety in terms of dissolving problems or eliminating conflicts, because that's not part of human nature. It has never happened. It will never happen, and it will be very boring, an organization in which there is not some kind of a difference of opinions. So difference of opinions will always generate in conflicts. Yeah.
After all, this is what happens in our parliaments, in our democracies, on a very imperfect way. But, it's not anything idealistic. So we can imagine that it can be. Okay, other questions? Objections?
Yes, I would like to make a question to Angela. Thank you, Angela, for your speak. It has been very interesting and has opened our project to new perspectives, in particular political, as Brunella said before. I would like to ask you, it seems that the VSM model is based on a principle of totally clearly and transparent communication. Is it so? Okay. Between the levels, also on the huge levels, on the higher levels, and on the lower levels, okay, and also in a horizontal way. But I would like to know, there's a huge literature in cybernetics about the role of ignorance, that sometimes ignorance could help in a paradoxical way to manage better efficiency of the whole system. So I would like to know if you have some suggestions about the role of ignorance, or if maybe ignorance could be a natural consequence of an imperfect VSM system, as all the systems are in the fact imperfect in their reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco. Very nice question, very interesting and interesting, challenging question. I haven't read enough about this theory about the role of ignorance in organizations, but in my practical experience, I do understand completely what you mean. And I don't think that the VSM will ever manage to create an organization that is in which the communication channels are completely transparent, completely clear, communications are completely fluid. This is just an ideal. It's a criteria. What it tries to do is to make as clear as possible the communication channels, as transparent as possible, regarding to the crucial information for governance. Yeah, it cannot be about everything, but at least what is crucial, what are, like in complexity theory, the attractors, the basic issues, at least the information about that should be public, should be open to everyone, so that everyone has the same access to that kind of information. Now, in real organizations, especially autocratic managers and those that are control freak, will do everything in their hands to avoid that to happen. They will make sure to protect crucial core information and to be the owners of the information, and to avoid that anybody has access to that information, so that they can keep control. Yeah, and the VSM cannot magically disentangle these situations. Yeah, the only thing that you can do with the VSM is to reveal to when you have a conversation between people about what is core, what is the kind of thing that everybody should know about. Yeah, if you manage to get agreements about at least about these issues, we should all know what's going on, and we should all have access to any changes in this information. This in itself creates a working environment that is more transparent, and that, let's say, generates a context in which self-organization and self-governance is more likely to happen. Yeah, that's the best you can do. You cannot aspire that everything is going to be, communication is going to be perfect, because even after applying the VSM, there will be always continuous issues of power. No, I can tell you, for instance, the anecdote in the Eco Village in Ireland. We have 3 years of BSM intervention. We managed to the Eco Village was the opposite of normal organizations. It was a cooperative, and the members were already completely embedded in the idea of self-governance, and they wanted a completely flat structure, cooperative and democratic, and that's why they call us, because John, my partner, he's an expert in applying the BSM in cooperatives, very well known in the UK because he has put into practice BSM in cooperatives. So they call us, and we did a beautiful work with them for 3 years. And the problem they have was they were fighting all the time, because all decisions were agreed by everyone, and it was 100 people, and 100 people defining where, if they buy another coffee maker or not, if they paint this wall in blue or yellow. No, it was impossible. So decisions were very long, very complicated, and we managed to help them to focus. And they were volunteers, so they were self-assigning their tasks. They were saying, "Oh no, I want to work in sustainability and environment," and "Oh no, I want to work in marketing," and then the real important things were not covered. So we managed to help them to self-organize in a way that they collectively cover the real important issues, and they managed and they managed to really develop a much more effective self-governance structure. That worked perfectly for 3 years, and some of them learned a lot about the BSM and become the ones that continue this over time. But after another 3 years, a group of new people came that were much more interested in money and economics than in sustainability. And there was a change in balance between the points of view of people. And then there was a moment in which those that came with these ideas have more power, and they dissolve many of the things that they have done. So, I mean, in that respect, this shows that the BSM is not total, is not perfect, is not, you cannot guarantee a long-term things unless people really learned and continue to develop these ideas. But like any other system or complex systems approach, it is not perfect, and you cannot guarantee that it will last forever. And there may be changes in the culture, in the politics, in the economics that can dismantle progress that you have done in a particular direction. Yeah. So.
Yeah, very clear. Thank you very much.
And what happened after these 3 years?
No, I mean, they changed their organization again. Some of them became very critical of the BSM. Some of them decided that the BSM was not good enough to sort out the organization of the Eco Village 3 years later after the intervention. Yeah, but there was nobody putting into practice the BSM 3 years later. But in their minds, some of them thought that the BSM, being such a powerful theory, should do in itself continue to have a lasting effect after over time. So there was this internal academic discussion between them, and some of them were saying, "Oh well, we ended up in another crisis, and so the BSM was not, didn't work after 3 years. It didn't work." Yeah. Some of them were saying, "Well, I did work for the time that we put it into practice. We stopped putting it into practice when what is not working anymore." No, so it's a kind of academic discussions that can happen.
It would need to take a constant investment that is not always easy.
Exactly.
So it appears to me that it may work for small communities, but what I'm thinking is, what about these enormous corporations going to Africa to do land grabbing? How can you imagine the steps again that may deconstruct this structure of exploitation, for instance?
Yeah. Well,
in
definitely.
that case, we have enormous power and complete powerlessness, which is, the risk, sorry for the bells, which is the risk that we are taking now, because we have this polarization, enormous richness, enormous poverty. So if this is the direction, how can we, or you, or all of us, work from the base, if the base is powerless?
Yeah. Well, this is the biggest question, and I don't have a unique answer to your question. I only have questions like you. Yeah, I think that in that case, like the corporations that are colonizing and that are imposing a neoliberal approach to colonization, economic colonization, and all that, like is happening everywhere. Um, I don't think that the approach that the way that I understand the VSM will be interesting for them at all, because it will be challenging everything that they do. There are people that have come with interpretations of the VSM, like Mike Jackson himself, as a very hierarchical thing to impose power and everything. That interpretation may be very welcome in that kind of corporation.
In that case,
So very
it's
likely.
a different interpretation.
Yeah. I mean, very likely, and there may be. I know that, for instance, there are consultants, VSM consultants in Europe. There are lots of in the German world. VSM has been very famous because these Swiss consultants, they ended up having a company that had like 300 management consultants, and Fredmund Malik was called the Peter Drucker of Europe. No, the owner of this company. Now he's retiring and the company is dissolving, but for the last 20 years, they have quite a lot of influence in the German world in big corporations. Yeah. But again, their way of interpreting the VSM was a much more traditional, business-oriented. Let's say use the VSM to make money, to be more efficient making money.
Can be taken advantage, but this is true for every innovation. They take it to be just an innovation.
Exactly.
Now, what makes it, another analogy I have is with socialism and communism. However they failed, they saved the capitalism because they allowed the working class to defend themselves and therefore to make the structure, the system going. Through strikes, for instance. Capitalism works also thanks to the strikes that were meant to jeopardize, to undermine the system. So at its worst, it could let the people survive at least, or decrease the damages of capitalism. What do you think? Or do you see it only rather as a revolutionary?
Well, no, I think that I wish that it could be revolutionary. That would be my aspiration. But I know I'm not naive at all, and I know that this is very unlikely given the state of the world. I mean, we are, those of us with a revolutionary spirit are a minority, and not very well respected by those of people that have the control of the media, the control of the money, and so on. So in that respect, I wouldn't think that I wouldn't. I was more naive, like 10 years, even 10 years ago, when we wrote our book with John, that was called A Complexity Approach to Sustainability Theory and Practice. It's a book by Imperial College Press, in the book Series of Complexity. And in those days, I was still thinking that perhaps the VSM will help to generate this consciousness and this enthusiasm with communities, cooperatives, non-for-profit organizations around the world, that with the social media and the internet and the new technologies, this consciousness, this collective consciousness will emerge to a level and produce an impact social change massively. Yeah. I became more pessimistic in the last in the last years, because I mean, it's clear that
almost
those
inevitable, given the times.
What we are seeing in this moment, I mean, those that are controlling the new technology that potentially is a revolutionary technology, those controlling the media and the technology are following their own economic private interests and not the interests of the majority of the people. So in that respect, my ambitions of a global revolution are sort of I'm sort of frustrated.
Well, no, I think it's a form of resistance. It's a form of resistance that is absolutely necessary, especially now. So it's not a matter of making it succeed or not, but to keep it in mind, and to make it work, not to the extent that it can work.
Yeah, but let's say that theoretically, my position has always been that if I have worked a little bit of idea of transition, the great transition. How can we design this great transition to a post-capitalistic society? And and theoretically, if we elaborate, if we manage to have some systemic change in small projects that are successful at a small level, no, in your neighborhood or in your family or in your cooperative or in your little business, or no, if these success experiments can be shown and become inspirational for other people that can repeat these experiments, and if we make available the knowledge and the technology to make this happening, then the possibilities of this self-disseminating exist. How and how this is, or when is this is going to happen, no idea. And and to what extent there will be people wanting to take the lead and make this happen and work with this agenda, no idea. I am very hopeful on the new generation, on people like yourselves. I mean, I think that the new generation has more freedom, more intellectual freedom, more political vision, more independent, more autonomy, more critical view, and more capability of discerning between fake media and fake news and fake communication channels, and at that level, I still hope that that perhaps the new generation will be able to do what my generation didn't manage to do.
Yeah? I'm also positive about that, because the new generations are skeptical about politics. They are indifferent about politics, of course. So from this, if this indifference is enhanced from one generation to the next, it may leave space for new ideas and new new possibilities. The fact that a minority votes, I think it's a good sign.
Yep. And this idea of little experiments and disseminating successful little experiments and generating collaborative networks is what is for me still an inspiration. Yeah. Like for instance, with Metaforum, no, I left you by the end of my presentation the link to Metaforum. So if you want to have a look. So Metaforum, now we decided to convert Metaforum. Metaforum is a members association, has been for 20 years. Yeah, it was basically the closest friends of Stafford Beer that decided, I mean, we're completely convinced this guy thinking is too revolutionary, is too important. We cannot let his legacy die to him. So we need to do something to preserve it. And in this moment, we have decided to convert Metaforum into a cooperative.
To be more.
And we want to invite the members to, we are trying to create like a kind of platform for collaborative learning and sharing information about BSM and cybernetics.
And what's the difference? What's the difference with being an association or a cooperative?
Well, the difference is the model of governance. The difference is that the members will be more empowered to take decisions and to contribute, to decide where to go, how to do it, and so on. So that's the ambition. I don't know how well it is.
But this is what we do too. We are a small group, absolutely horizontal, just with a coordinator that happens to be me by chance. But we do not absolutely have any hierarchy. It's absolutely heterarchical. So we try to use a kind of method based on conversation.
Yeah, I noticed.
We'll see what happens.
I noticed the similarity. That's why I mentioned the Metaforum, because I noticed that you are a federation and that you have little groups of people that are working in that idea. So I think that we have very similar aspirations.
Yeah,
and as well, it's like sort of revitalizing cybernetics. I think that is the same aspiration. I think that we both believe the cybernetic principles are very, very robust and have been misunderstood, forgotten, and need to be regenerated, reincarnated, and redeveloped. It's a very powerful science, properly understood. So in that respect, I think that we are just natural collaborators. We're heading in similar directions.
Okay, I hope we can do it. We can expand our collaboration. But I want to see whether there are other questions. Anyway, I'm also curious about knowing more about Stafford Beer.
Mhm.
Can you tell us more about how the way you encountered him or worked with him?
Yeah, of course. Yes, Stafford Beer, he was self-trained. He was doing a degree on psychology when the war with India started, Britain and India. So he ended up being a captain of the Navy in India. And after the war in India, he stayed for, I don't know, for a long period, and he went to Tibet. And he was trained by the monks. So he learned a lot about Buddhism and Zen philosophy. And he even learned to speak Sanskrit. And after that, he developed a lot of, let's say, a way of understanding that was more systemic and very different from the Western traditions. After that, he came back to England and he ended up becoming an expert on operational research. And he led a steel industry that was very famous in England and in Sheffield. And he developed the VSM as a way of challenging traditional approaches to management. But he started practicing the VSM in industry. No, but he demonstrated that with the VSM, he managed to generate enormous increases in productivity. And then he became very famous and an international consultant, and then he started working. He started working with the pioneer cyberneticians, with the people like Warren McCulloch, Ross Ashby, Gregory Bateson, very close friend, and Heinz von Förster, Nora Briner, and he became all of them. So he became very close, and then he started being mentored by Ross Ashby, and by Warren McCulloch. And then he developed this idea of the BSM, basically using McCulloch and Ashby's theories more than anyone else. And then after that, he started being called everywhere, and he had many big interventions. He he moved to Canada. He was very socialist in his beliefs. He didn't like Margaret Thatcher government, so he decided he couldn't be in the same country with Margaret Thatcher because she was destroying the spirit of the British spirit. So he moved to Canada. But he kept a little cottage in Wales, and in those days, no, it was before he moved to Canada that he was called by Salvador Allende. He was called by Allende because one of his advisors, Fernando Flores, had been reading Stafford Beer's work and was very inspired by Stafford. And then he convinced Allende that if he wanted to create a socialist government that was democratic and participatory, not like the Russian government or the Cubans, no, he said, let's experiment the VSM. And then they called Stafford Beer as an advisor to Allende. And for 2 years, Stafford developed the CyberSyn project that was made
So it was applied for a while.
Yes, applied 100%. 100%. Yeah, it was very ambitious because they wanted not only to apply the VSM, Allende have the ball control of the fabrics, the factories, the industrial factories to the workers. And Stafford was empowering the workers to be the ones managing the factories. Yeah, and they have created this idea of this communication network between all the different factories in Chile, connected with the Palacio de la Moneda, the central government palace, with a very rudimentary technology that was just imagining like it will be with the internet 50 years later, no? But they managed to have like telex machines in which they were identify key performance indicators in each one of the factories, and then they were sending their behavior on horses or boats or whatever mechanism to try to simulate real time, that it wasn't proper real time. But they were creating this very ambitious project of trying to keep informed the government about what was going in the different factories. They have succeeded in terms of implementing the technology and in terms of educating the people. They have also a project that was the Checo project, the People's Project, that was how to create a new way of thinking, a new relationship between the citizens and the government. And they created in those days this system that was with the antennas of the TV. They have an algedonic meter that was a little round thing with a happy face, in which the citizens could put either an unhappy smile or a very happy smile when President Allende was in the TV. Yeah, when he was in the TV. So President Allende was asking questions to people, and people will move their algedonic meter and saying, we disapprove or we approved. And this was going through telex machines to the Palacio de la Moneda. And they were summarizing responses, and they were knowing this is being approved or disapproved. So it was very, very revolutionary for the time. I mean, and it's actually now, 50 years later, that we have all these algorithmic meters in the train stations and in the public toilets, and saying that, are you happy with the service? Are you unhappy with the service? That was Stafford Beer 50 years ago, inventing all these ideas. So it has some practical implications, but the reality was that the government was destroyed. I mean, that Allende was killed, and the CIA sabotaged all the regime, and they imposed Pinochet, and we know all how it ended up in a tragical way. And obviously, all the people in the Cybersyn project have to escape from Chile. Stafford Beer managed to help Raúl Espejo, that was the technical director of the Cinco project, to come to England, and Raúl became a professor in cybernetics in Aston University. That's where I ended up doing my PhD, because Raúl came to Colombia, to Bogota, to do a seminar on cybernetics, and I was working for the city council. I have a background in computer and systems engineering, so I was working for the city council. I met Raúl, and I really, really like cybernetics. And a few years later, I came to do my PhD in England under Raúl Espejo. And that's where I met Stafford. I met Stafford when he was presiding the Operational Research Society in Cambridge. And he already knew about me because I happened to be the only Latin American PhD student around. So I was very privileged because he immediately embraced me, and I became his favorite PhD student. And then we developed this very loving relationship. And he always said to me, "Oh, let's not talk about the BSM. This is very, very, very boring. Let's talk about politics and Chile and socialism." And he was very, very passionate about Chile and about the socialism and about Latin America. He developed a huge, enormous love for Latin American, the Latin American culture. And so we developed this really, really nice relationship. After I finished my PhD, over the years I was here in England, I used to go and visit him in this cottage. He was, as I said, after Chile, he resigned to all his personal possessions. He was a very rich person. He wasn't a millionaire, and he wasn't an aristocrat, because I don't know if you have heard the Evgeny Morozov's podcast on the Cybersyn project. If you ever come across Morozov did a really interesting historical investigation of the Cybersyn project and produced a 9 hours podcast in which he describes many of the really very well spotted analysis, political, economic and political analysis of the project. But he portrayed the Stafford Beer as an eccentric millionaire that was there playing cybernetic games with the poor Chileans, and experimenting with cybernetic tools in a very inefficient way. And according to him, Stafford Beer ended up dying drunk in his cottage in Wales, and never succeeded to have any impact on his cybernetic theories, which is completely untrue. But anyway, that's the story of Morozov, and he wanted to just attract a big audience. So he took the image of Stafford Beer and portrayed it in ways that we, the ones that really knew Stafford Beer well, were really, really offended and really upset about Morozov's comments on Stafford. But the reality was that Stafford, after Chile, he decided to give up all his possessions, and he decided to meditate. And he got this cottage in Wales, in which that was completely ecological. And he went there, and for several years, he just meditated and wrote his books. And it was in that period that I met him. So when I met him, I used to go to visit him, and he was always very strict about the way of the protocol and the agenda. So the agenda included 2 hours of meditation by the stream. I was on my eating very simple food. And then there was a time in which we will have a glass of wine and we will talk about politics. That was really, really interested him, and Latin America. And but he was a fascinating character. He was also a poet, an amazing poet, and an artist. By the end of his life, he produced a series of esoteric paintings that were exhibited in Liverpool Cathedral and are still preserved. They are in St. Gallen in a gallery that Fredman Malik did in his office with all the artifacts of Stafford.
So he has, are these paintings still available?
Yeah.
I remember St. Gallen had a gallery that Heidegger.
Yes. They do have
Heidegger.
Also. I didn't know that.
So I don't know if it's the same gallery.
Yeah, but, no, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so.
No, this is very private. And Stafford's arts he wasn't a great artist. He was experimenting with arts by the end of his life. Yeah. So there is this arty project that he did that was inspired in the how is it called? I forgot the Enneagram. And so it's a sort of 12 paintings that he called the Requiem. And
did he happen to know Gordon Pask?
Very well. They were very close
because
friends.
He was also an artist.
Very close friends. Stafford and Gordon were very, 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 very close friends. And there are recordings of the two of them, conversations between the two of them. They were very, very, very close friends. Yes. And also Spencer Brown was very close friend of Stafford. Stafford protected and supported Spencer Brown. So Stafford was very close friend with them, very close friend with Ashby, no? So yes. So he was a polyglot. He was a very, very systemic character. No, at the same time, he could be a scientist, a very strict scientist, self-formed, because he ended up having several honorary professorships and PhDs, but he never completed his degree in psychology, and he never completed a professional degree. He did everything on his own, so he was unbelievable. No,
and Leonardo of cybernetics.
Exactly. Completely original in his thinking, no constraints from any traditional disciplines, and just doing what his intuition and his wisdom help him. And talking to him was a completely transformational experience. Every time that I went to be with him, I ended up like he was scrambled my brain. No, I left him thinking, oh gosh, like he sort of completely changed my way of thinking and understanding reality. It was a very, very deep spiritual experience being with him. And very warm character, very, very humble. He was best friends with all the local farmers, with the people in the pub. He was very charming, very happy, he was the less arrogant person that you can imagine. Yeah, you see sometimes these very, very famous scientists, and you talk to them and they look at you like, no, and you try to talk to them and they oh, you are no one, no, or they try all the time to demonstrate their knowledge. No, Stafford was very humble. Stafford was not like that at all. He was amazingly warm and encouraging. So, for instance, in Chile, he was best friends with all the musicians. No, he developed this very close friendship with Angel Parra and all the Chileans that were doing the revolution, the Chilean revolution, all the socialists. And he was very inspired. He even translated to English the song from Angel Parra, Caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. No, so when we were together, he used to sing me this song in English, and he was very, very charming, very loving. He had two wives and 7 children with the 2 wives, and his last relationship was Elena Leonard. They got together after Elena was also divorced and with 3 children, They got together. She also got a PhD in cybernetics in BSM, in organizational cybernetics, with Barry Clemson. That was the other person that was doing BSM in California. Yeah. So Elena and Stafford met. Elena was 15 years younger than Stafford, and Elena is still alive, and she's the honorary president of the Metaforum.
Wow.
And she's also a very, very charming and amazingly wise person. I think that what will define a Stafford for me more than anything else is his wisdom. He was a very wise, very charming, and amazingly deep intellectual. Very deep character, very capable of understanding.
Meditation, of course, is a strong tool to. Also, Varela was interested in
Yes,
Buddhism.
they were also very close friends
Maybe
with Varela.
it's not by chance that cybernetics may take this. This
Stafford Beer
direction.
also wrote the Perfection to Autopoiesis and Connection, the English edition. Yes, it's beautiful, that Perfection. I love it a lot. Yeah,
And he did the
brilliant.
introduction to the Tree of Knowledge from Maturana and
The
Varela.
real knowledge. Yeah.
Yeah, and Maturana and Varela confessed that it was Stafford Beer's introduction to them that really make the jump into the world scene of cybernetics. So Stafford was very influential, and of course Stafford was in Chile while they were both developing the theories, and also Maturana and Varela, in particular Varela, had been in California working with Bateson, and Varela also was very spiritual and was working with the Dalai Lama. Stafford was also very close to the Dalai Lama. So there were a lot of these connections between them, very deep connections. And
this connection with meditation might be also elaborated.
Yes.
I think in general with the Eastern tradition, as I told you, Brunella, I would like to got deeper in the links between the Eastern tradition and cybernetics. Yeah.
You know who can help you, Marco? There is a Vanilla Beer, is Stafford Beer's daughter. She's the oldest of the children. Vanilla is an artist, and she has a master on esoteric studies. She was from Stafford Children, the one that worked closely with the Stafford and sort of inherited all the passion on cybernetics, and she is an specialist on esoteric issues. So I think that if you want, I can put you in touch with her.
Yeah, of course.
She lives in Espinosa, in France. Yep. And she's very approachable. She's an active member of the Metaforum. As a matter of fact, if you see the Metaforum website, all the paintings are from Vanilla.
I will go to see, of course. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to get in contact to Vanilla.
She's the best person for exploring these links.
Yeah, because I really liked also the cybernetics, of course, but also the exoterism. So it could be great if it could be matched together. Yeah.
Great. Okay.
Okay, fantastic. So we have a plan. We keep in touch. Would you give, Angela, you give us these contacts, both with the law, with the juridical people, and with the exoteric people.
I will, with pleasure, yes.
And we can, if you want, we can, participate into your seminars when you.
Yes, of course.
I attended two; they were quite interesting. So I think they might enrich our.
Yeah, and I mean, if you want me to announce your webinars in the Metaforum, I can also do that. I haven't done that because I don't know how much you want, because we have
a plan with a seminar of mine in June, I think.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
And
yours will be announced very shortly. Yes.
Okay, so we can also.
You can share my email with them, with everybody.
Of course.
And if you want to contact me, I'm always happy to work in these topics. As you can see, very passionate about all these topics.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Angela.
Thank you. It was really enriching.
Lovely
questions, I think we can conclude here.
Yeah.
Okay, Angela. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Angela.
Thank you, Brunella.
Thank you.
Lovely to meet you.
Good night. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.